This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you, and we got another busy one. Some great news from playoff hockey last night for local teams. Ice winning and sweeping the Saskatoon Blades to move on to the WHL Championship Series. And the Manitoba Moose do it again in overtime, beating the Milwaukee Admirals, taking a 2-1 lead in their series. Now one game away from moving on to the next round with both games 4 and a potential game 5 in Milwaukee. We'll talk about both of these. We're going to have Scott Billeck jump on the program, and Billeck, of course, will continue our thoughts on the aftermath of the season and a look ahead into the next couple months and a pivotal point of the Winnipeg Jets offseason. And Brandon Rewucki is going to jump on as well, and we'll get Rue's thoughts on the Jets, as well as we'll talk a little Stanley Cup playoffs as well. But we will check in with the Moose. Now, I'm not sure whether it's going to be Dan Fink. We had another amazing OT call. We'll play that for you in a couple minutes, or one of the players from the Moose. But in the second half of the program, we will go to Milwaukee and check in with the club that's won 2 consecutive games in extra time to move within one game of moving on to the next round. And, of course, no big Jets news over the course of the last 24 hours, but still a lot to dissect coming out of the end of the season and last weekend. As I mentioned, we'll kick that around with both Scott Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun and Brandon Rewucki of Skates and Plates. Obviously, I'll bring in Rima right away. We'll get to a little bit of last night's action in the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. And we'll have some time for the Coolbet lines for a couple more big games tomorrow or tonight. Game 2s in round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Listen, just before we bring in Michael Remis, got to thank the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Winnipeg Gold Eyes, Assiniboia Downs, Modern Man Barbershops, Aquatech, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, Vita Health, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Princess Auto, Consolidated Supply, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Aikens Lake, Breezy Bend Country Club, and our betting partner over at Coolbet Canada. Speaking of Wallace & Wallace, at that great final announcement yesterday, wrapping up this winter's Unsung Hero program with Wallace & Wallace. And make sure to join us tomorrow, because Josh Morrissey, who was so kind to help us out with that program, and obviously a big supporter of the Dream Factory, is one of the ambassadors. Josh is going to join us. We'll talk about the season pass, look ahead to the offseason for him, coming off the really unfortunate end of his season in Game 3 early on in the first period against the Vegas Golden Knights. And we'll thank him for his involvement in that program as well. And, of course, a big thanks to Wallace & Wallace for everything they do for us. All right, let's get to it. Let's get Remis in here. What's going on, dude?
Hey, we do actually have some Jets news. Just came out a minute ago. Sean Shapiro tweeting it. Dylan Samberg will be joining Team USA at the World Championships.
Excellent.
So we had heard Scheifele and Morrissey won't be going for Canada. And Ehlers was kind of up in the air. He said he might be playing some hockey. We're assuming that would be at the Worlds. But Samberg on Team USA. Pretty awesome. Excited to see that. Great rookie season. Wasn't nominated for the Calder, but was tied for the lead for rookie defenseman plus minus, tied with Owen Power, who did get nominated. So great season for Samberg, and that's going to be cool. We'll be watching USA.
You know what? That's just perfect timing. Shout out to Sean Shapiro for letting us know that right off the bat, because as much as there's been a lot of hand-wringing about the last week in and around Winnipeg and this hockey club, there are... I mean, it's easy to focus on the negative, and it's easy to focus on a lot of the shrapnel from everything that we heard on the weekend. But, you know, looking ahead, Dylan Samberg is going to be a big, big part of this hockey club, hopefully for a long time. And he had just a phenomenal rookie season. I thought got better and better throughout the year. And I think Dylan Samberg is going to be a huge part of this blue line next year. And as I mentioned, hopefully for many years to come. And this World Championships opportunity, Remo, I mean, listen, you'd far rather be busy and unavailable. But for a young player like Samberg to get a chance to play against so many stars from the National Hockey League and around the world, to represent his country, for a guy that had a slower development path, I think this will be just a great opportunity. And I think about what that chance did for instance, an Adam Lowry last year, who finally got a chance to represent his country and made the most of it. That's a great way to start off the show, and congratulations to Dylan for doing that. And hopefully that's another experience that'll help him continue to grow into, a very important cog on the Winnipeg Jet blue line.
Yeah, I agree. And you look at the team, some people in chat asking about Connor Hellebuck, not named. I said Hellebuck, he needs a rest. He's got to take a breather after that season. For goalies, they did go with Casey DeSmith and Cal Peterson. And these World Championship teams have been trending a lot younger the last couple of years, although I see Nick Bonino on there, Alex Tuck as well.
What about KFC?
No KFC on the list. Connor Garland's there. Looking at some, Anders Bjork is on the list. Who else? I mean, there's a couple others, but no, he's the only Jet that I see, Hustler.
Well, anyways, that'll give us a reason to tune into some Team USA games. Like, the World Championships is, I mean, ideally, if this was at a time where, I mean, just imagine a world, Remo, where the World Championships, which happened every year, was truly a best-on-best tournament. I mean, that's a world that I would love to live in.
Don't get started, Huss. Oh, come on.
I'd love to get close to even having that happen once a generation, I guess, to start off, because right now we've got a generation of incredible players that haven't had that chance to do it. But it's not one of those tournaments that, honestly, I think you sort of tune in, or at least I always have as an NHL fan, as a person from Winnipeg that follows the Winnipeg Jets, and paid most close attention to wherever the Jets players have been playing. Now, obviously, if Canada gets down to the medal round or into the gold medal game, you're pulling for your own country. But it is an interesting tournament. You nailed it, actually, with the trend, particularly of Team USA, going much, much younger. And I'll tell you what, I think, considering the names that you just rolled out there, this is going to be a great, great opportunity for Dylan Samberg to show what he can do and, get important playing time. I don't think playing time is going to be an issue for him next year here in Winnipeg and in the National Hockey League. And many would say that it shouldn't have been this year, considering the way that he played. But overall, we'll be paying attention to Team USA and, of course, Team Canada as well when the World Championships do get going. I mentioned right off the top, and we'll get to the Stanley Cup Playoffs in a minute, great night for our local teams on the road last night in the playoffs. So I guess first off, congratulations to the Winnipeg Ice. We talked to Munzie yesterday about their challenge going into Saskatoon with an opportunity to take care of the Blades in 4 straight, and they did exactly that. And now the Winnipeg Ice Ream are going to have probably, I would say, at least 5 or 6 days before they host Game 1 of the Western Hockey League Championship. This, of course, was the round that they got bounced last year by the Edmonton Oil Kings. But this, honestly, was somewhat of a mismatch. I had a friend that I was out with last night that had just gotten off the plane from Saskatoon, and he had mentioned that, talking to people around there wasn't a lot of confidence that the Blades were going to be able to do to the Ice what they did in the previous round, losing the first 3 and coming back 4 straight. And I think the Ice learned a lot about what it takes to, succeed in that long grind of, 4 rounds of the playoffs and then, of course, potentially a spot in the Memorial Cup, falling just short. You can't overstate how important it is to finish off teams when you have the opportunity to do that. They got the job done last night, and now they'll have a couple days off, some great practice. Meanwhile, over on the other side of things, Brad Lambert and the Seattle Thunderbirds are still in the middle of their series with Kamloops. They're playing tonight, a 2-1 series. Game 5 is going to go Saturday. So the earliest this thing could start would be early next week.
Yeah, Brian sent out the schedule. I think they got some practice days, some days off, so we'll get a chance to come home, rest, recharge, and I'm excited. We'll get, that's premier WHL hockey here. Conference championship taking place against the winner of Kamloops in Seattle. And of course, Seattle has Winnipeg Jets 2022 draft pick, Brad Lambert, who has been absolutely tearing it up since returning or since being assigned to Seattle, the start of 2023 after the World Juniors. So we'll keep an eye on it, and I imagine that's going to be a hot one if you want to see some some top playoff hockey here in Winnipeg.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as far as that series goes, they'll play Game 5 one way or the other on Saturday. Game 6 is on Monday, and if Game 7 happens, it will in fact be the next night, which is interesting, but back-to-back games, including, I mean, not long travel between Kamloops and Seattle, but this series could go as long as Tuesday. And if that happens, then again, of course, you've got a long, long ride for whoever wins that series to Winnipeg for Game 1. So the Ice could actually be waiting as long as maybe 8 days before they get back on the ice to play. But if it is Seattle and Brad Lambert, I think that's the perfect storm certainly for Winnipeg hockey fans and Winnipeg Jet fans who will love to see and will be totally behind the home team, the Ice, as they try to win the WHL Championship. But certainly for people that also pull for the Jets that are quite interested in some young men that could be key players in the future, to hear what he's done in Seattle and then get a chance to see it firsthand in Winnipeg would add even more to a potential Thunderbirds Ice series in the final.
Yeah, I mean, that's one series we're keeping an eye on. There's also another playoff series here with Winnipeg team, Manitoba Moose, with another overtime win last night, back-to-back overtime wins. Pretty incredible, winning 2-1. And you were said to me over the weekend, they just looked very outmatched in that first game, maybe because it was the long layoff. But here they are after 3 games, Hess, in a good spot.
It wasn't the long layoff. It was the fact that, I mean, listen, down the stretch, obviously we were obsessing on watching everything that the Jets were doing. And, the Moose were pretty much, we knew that they were going to be a playoff team. So maybe we weren't watching every minute of Moose hockey as close to we were as Jets hockey. But as I mentioned, if you missed this, I went to the game on Friday night, and I couldn't believe it. That team basically looked like the Nashville Predators that the Winnipeg Jets played down the stretch in those final weeks of the season. And, with the trades that Nashville made, with the injuries that they had, half of the Milwaukee team was playing in the National Hockey League, and then those guys came down, and that has always been, a real difference maker in the American Hockey League playoffs. What teams make the playoffs, what teams don't, who comes back down, who's eligible to play, and it just looked like that Milwaukee team was so stacked, and, I mean, they really, really worked the Moose on that night. Goaltending was a bit of an issue as both of the top goalies on the Jets or the Moose had just come back from the Jets and arrived a little later on that day. But the one thing I'll say about the Moose, Reem, is that, I mean, they have a special level of resilience. We've seen this over and over from this hockey club, and they hang around in games. They were less than a minute away from being down 2-0 heading to Milwaukee on Sunday afternoon, and Cole Myers scored that goal, and then Hark with the big one in OT. And last night, hung in there, traded punches with the Milwaukee Admirals, got some strong goaltending, and it was Wyatt Bongiovanni as the OT hero last night for Manitoba. And as I mentioned right off the top, this is a best-of-5 series, first 2 in Manitoba, next 3 in Milwaukee. Getting that Game 3 was absolutely huge, as big as it was getting the Game 2, because now they've got 2 outs or 2 opportunities to try to take care of the Admirals.
Yeah, and so what is the 2-3 series? So they're hanging out in Milwaukee, and we'll talk more with our Manitoba Moose mystery guest, if it's Fink or a player, at the end of the show.
As far as last night goes in the National Hockey League, I don't know what to say. Going into 2 nights ago, there had been 2 occasions in NHL history where a player had scored 4 goals in an NHL playoff game and their team lost. 1986, Denny Savard, and 1993, Ray Ferraro. And incredibly, Remis, it has now happened on back-to-back nights. Yesterday, we were talking about Joe Pavelski's heroics in that 5-4 OT loss to the Kraken. And today, Leon Draisaitl with 4 last night against the Vegas Golden Knights. But it wasn't enough, as the Oilers gave up a half dozen. And for the 7th consecutive series, lose game 1.
Yeah, both Canadian teams going down in game 1. Toronto first, and then Edmonton. And Vegas, I mean, they're so good. You know, their aggressive forecheck, I think, really caused problems. A lot of turnovers from Edmonton, and we know they can make you pay on the power play. But it was Vegas who also scored a couple power play markers as well. And Leon Draisaitl with the 4 goals. His playoff numbers are absolutely absurd. I think he's close to
historically good.
Yeah, I think it was like close to 2 points a game, like 1.8 points per game. 52 points in his last 25 playoff games. Pretty incredible. His playoff Leon Draisaitl. So we'll see how it goes. They don't play again until Saturday. They'll have a couple days off here to regroup. There was big talk about going into the game about Mark Stone and his health. We played the video here of him gingerly walking off the ice, and I said to you before the show, I think this Mark Stone injury, I think it's a work, Huss. It's just all an elaborate hoax to get around the salary cap. They're telling him, you know, we don't even know. Did he really even have back surgery, Hess, or they just put him on LTIR?
He was in Bermuda.
Yeah,
he was in Bermuda sipping Mai Tais and watching games on the internet.
Okay, Mark, you're going to go on practice and gingerly walk off the ice. Just like go really slow on the bench, and then, you know, they'll think you're injured, but when you come to play, you'll be 100% and you can score all these points. But in all seriousness, what an incredible performance from Mark Stone, who I do see those comments in chat every time about Vegas being over the cap. But here they are, and it's amazing the success that they've had. I'm just thinking about Vegas advancing to another conference final. Gets people angry, Huss, when these expansion teams are doing so well.
Well, you know what? I mean, this goes back to the philosophy of the league when, I mean, what did they charge? $500 million and then $600 million. You know, I think they wanted these teams to be somewhat competitive. No one could have imagined, and let's face it, no one predicted that the Vegas Golden Knights were going to be any good in the first year, and we all know how that year ended. And everyone was writing off the Kraken this year. No one thought they'd make the playoffs, and no one sure as hell thought they'd beat the Colorado Avalanche, and no one thought they'd beat the Dallas Stars in game number 1. So I always say it. That's why they play the games. And we're learning a lot about, you know, 2 very different teams right now. I mean, Vegas, an underdog against the Edmonton Oilers for obvious reasons when you have the incredible super elite talent that Edmonton has. But tonight, you know, Dallas has to get this one, and I expect that they will. We saw a number of teams lose game 1 in the first round and come back and win the series. So by no stretch are they behind it. But I just found that bizarre that Draisaitl just continues to do what he's doing, but they weren't able to get the win last night. And we should mention that Jersey, Carolina. I've been so off on Jersey. I can't get a read on this team. I really thought that they might have the advantage in the jump coming out of Game 7, like the Kraken did on like the Kraken and Florida Panthers did the other night. But that wasn't the case. They only had 1 shot in the first period last night against the Carolina Hurricanes. And the Canes, who have been written off by a lot of people despite being consistently really good for the last 5+6 years under Rod Brindamore. Maybe the injuries maybe they are able to overcome them. Sebastian Aho leading the way last night. I saw a real interesting thing on NHL Network with Mike Johnson talking about the style of forecheck that the Carolina Hurricanes use, you know, with the stick first and then the body. And it was neat because you often don't see, you know, many differences in styles when it comes to actual technique. But I mean, I think Mike's one of the best in the business. He sort of broke that down. Maybe I'll retweet that if I can find it again. Bottom line is, great start for Carolina, who jumped on a team that had just played a real tough 7-game series. We didn't see the Leafs do that. We did not see the Dallas Stars do that, but Carolina got the job done last night, and I think it speaks to the playoff experience that they have in that lineup and in that dressing room, even with the likes of Svechnikov out.
Yeah, day one of the second round was the road teams winning, and day two had both of the home teams winning with Vegas and Carolina. We know that's a team, Huss, that plays well structured, strong defensively, and they do have injuries with Svechnikov, Teravainen, and Pacioretty out, but they're still very strong on defense. It was Anderson yesterday. They got solid goaltending. So, and as for New Jersey, Timo Meier, they said today remains day to day, and he didn't play yesterday. So we're on Meier day to day watch us. But Carolina, a lot of people picking the Islanders to upset them, and a lot of people picking New Jersey after seeing them. But they just keep doing it. So good for them.
Well, and I'll say this, and maybe we'll touch on this when we hit the Coolbet lines a little later on. But if you still believe in the Leafs, if you still believe in the Dallas Stars, if you still think Edmonton's going to get it done in this series, Jersey as well, the series prices for betting right now have changed significantly after the first losses by those teams. So if you still have faith, now might be a good time to get in. Listen, Billeck's going to join us in a couple minutes. I see some people in chat as well talking about the email from True North to Winnipeg Jet fans through their mailing list. And I know a lot of people had a bit of a field day with that very unfortunate email that came out in the aftermath of the weekend. But think this one hits the mark a lot better. And it's from John Olfert, who's the president of True North Sports and Entertainment. And I won't read the entire thing, but essentially it's expressing sincere appreciation and gratitude for your loyal support of our Winnipeg Jets during the season. True North's purpose is to be relentless in our pursuit of providing a superior fan experience, developing championship caliber hockey teams, nurturing our employee team, and collectively making a meaningful and consistent contribution to our community. They link to the True North purpose. But again, moving on, it's the fans who turn hockey games at Canada Life Centre into events, who transform an NHL playoff game into a Winnipeg whiteout with all the fun and games that these games bring. Despite an exceptional start to the season and qualifying for postseason play, we share in the disappointment by not advancing further. It is an organizational goal to win a Stanley Cup for our city and province. In response, we offer no excuses or rationalizing comments, but instead embrace the resilience our community is known for and continue our collective efforts to improve for the future. Looking ahead, they mentioned a $13 million renovation already underway to improve service offerings, the North Concourse, and Wi-Fi for all fans at Canada Life Centre. They then mentioned the tireless efforts of our hockey management and scouts as they prepare for the combine, the draft, and the necessary work required to develop championship caliber teams. And the organization remains focused on sales efforts within the framework of the Forever Winnipeg ticket sales campaign. So, I mean, listen, they nailed a number of the points. I mean, listen, you can put that out in a number of different ways. I certainly, what I'm seeing in the chat and hearing from people, Remo, is that the response to that message is a lot more positive than the very unfortunate one that was, obviously a gaffe. We talked about it earlier this week.
Certainly was a gaffe, and yeah, I think this is what people wanted to see: appreciation for the fans, commitment to reaching their goal of winning the Stanley Cup, and improved Wi-Fi at the Canada Life Centre. I think we all want that, Hustler. Got to post on social media and tell everyone that we're at the games. Like, why even go if you can't put it on your Instagram story? Am I right?
Hey, the Wi-Fi's better. We'll commit to more food reviews from the games coming up next year.
Exactly. We could
easier to pull those off.
That's what we want. So I actually, we were there, the construction at that bottom, the bottom level, the restaurant there, where that Moxie's is. So I'm excited to see what they're doing because, they removed that wall where the Moxie's was, and you're like, wait a second, this is just Moxie's, but without the wall. But I think they do have, it's clear they have bigger plans.
That was awesome. I mean, I know you didn't get to many games in the lower bowl this year,
but it was good.
That became, one of the challenges of a small footprint, and we don't need to spend too much time on this, is that, especially in the center areas of the two sides, it gets really, really packed, at the intermissions. So that area, opening it up, allowed, first of all, was a great meeting place for people, at intermissions during the season. And also just allowed a little bit more space and more room to breathe, because that is and always has been a real challenge for Canada Life Center, or for Canada Life Center. I was going to say MTS Center, way back in the day.
MTS Place, which one
when it was originally built. So listen, but again, this. The main things we're going to be talking about is the future from a hockey side of things, but all of these things are important, and obviously we'll be all over it here on Winnipeg Sports Talk throughout the off season. All right, Billeck's coming up. I'm wearing my fish shirt today. It's beautiful outside. The sun is shining. I cannot wait for the 19th and Goldeyes home opener right now, and it was neat. I saw the guys. They opened training camp yesterday, continuing today, and then heading out on the road for some preseason games and to begin their season. Fish, as a team, I think, went out as a group over to Finn's yesterday. Had a nice meal before things got going. So, anyways, mark it down. 19th is home opener. We're going to be doing some real fun stuff with the Goldeyes, including a couple Winnipeg Sports Talk nights, gathering the crew in and around Craft Beer Corner to take in everything that is summer baseball in Winnipeg. And I can't wait to see the new rules as well. I mean, as I said, you guys knew I was at the Jays games a couple of weeks ago when I was in Toronto, and I just could not believe how much that pitch clock changed the game. And that's going to be there in the American Association as well this year. So bring it on. Go to goldeyes.com if you want to look at season tickets, mini packs, group tickets, and all their promotional schedule, including the big day in August when our guy Reggie Abercrombie's number is retired. Looking forward to being a part of that as well. I do want to thank our friends over at Modern Man Barbershop. Modern Man is doing a big event coming up on Sunday at the new location on Pembina Highway. Of course, we've got 8 locations for Modern Man, but 2 new locations, Plessis and Pembina Highway, right by Bishop. 12 to 5 on Sunday. Haircuts are going to be $9 with proceeds going to Cancer Care Manitoba. The first 100 people there are going to get a free lunch from the Jeepney food truck. And as you can tell, I've been putting off a cut for a little while, so I'll be there as well for probably the first hour or so, and get the great services of our friends at Modern Man as well. So I'll tell you what, we've got a whole bunch of things coming up. I do want to thank our friends at Manitoba Battery as well. The gang at Manitoba Battery is ready to go. We have a blowout of golf cart batteries for the opening of the season. They're celebrating their 10th birthday right now. And as we get ready for taking on Manitoba golf courses this year, and of course, ripping around from site to site, if you have a need for a golf cart battery, right now is the time to do it. Both 6 and 8 volt batteries are on sale for $167 and $177, and you get $17.50 back when you return your cores as well to Manitoba Battery. And those prices include delivery anywhere in the city of Winnipeg. So head on down to see Donnie and the gang, 1026 Logan Avenue, and you can also order online or find out more online at manitobabattery.com. And hey, a big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club, the official spirit of your Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Bomber training camp coming up as well. Cannot wait for that. In the meantime, you can grab Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey at your local Manitoba liquor marts, and the CC and Ginger's now available in 473 milliliter bottles. Pick that up at your local beer vendor as well. And if you can't find it, ask them for it. It should be there, as it's pretty much available citywide. All right, let's welcome in Scotty Billeck to the program for a little more chat. A lot's happened since we spoke with Scott last Thursday. We were getting ready for Game 5. Man, Scott, Game 5 seems about a month ago after everything that's happened in the last week.
Felt like a long weekend, didn't it? Like last weekend was a long weekend. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the season's over, right? I mean, I guess that's the thing. And so you start the funeral procession, as it were, with this team. And yeah, ever since, they went out Thursday, the way that they went out Thursday, obviously Rick Bonus's comments after that game, and then, the players' response and ultimately Rick's response that day, which was odd, and then Kevin Cheveldayoff on Sunday, speaking for almost 45 minutes and not saying a whole lot. So it was quite the weekend, and I think now people are starting to everything's starting to come down a little bit, and it's been it's been a week. It's been a wild week in this town, for at least on the hockey side of things, for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I don't think we need to go back. Enough ink has been spilled on what didn't happen in Game 5. But
right,
funny enough, it was the reaction of Bones to a really unfortunate, poor performance, one that we'd seen before from this core, at least, facing elimination, that sort of brought out. It was pretty clear. I mean, I think, and he said it himself. I mean, once you get back to some of the things that happened during that long swoon in February, that this was bubbling up and it couldn't happen anymore. Although the ironic thing about the whole thing is that this has made, I think, Rick Bowness even more popular than he already was with the Winnipeg Jet fan base, because I think there's a lot of people that, appreciated the exclamation point, shall we say, that he put on it, although that obviously was not shared by a number of players. And that is an issue, whether fans love the bravado or the bluster of it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I was waiting to see what happened in that Boston series, and it was interesting because when Boston lost, I was like, okay, how are these guys going to handle it? Because there's a team, and it's a historical team, whatever, but I just go back, and I promise I'm talking about the Jets here in the end, but it was just Brad Marchand came out and was like, yeah, it's my fault, and that's, I think, I've had people email me and tell me and say, it's not, the coach maybe shouldn't have came out like that and been, that we ask for honesty, right? Like, at the end of the day, we want, and it's not that we want guys just to fly off the handle, but we want their honest assessment, whether it's 15 minutes after a game or if it's 2 days after a game, right? And Rick Bowness came out and gave his honest assessment. And honestly, I almost expected him to walk it back. And I can understand he didn't like using the word disgusted. That's fine. I mean, I think he felt that he made a mistake in his wording, but he didn't step back from, the pushback comments. He didn't say he was going to tone it down. This is what it is. And he offered no real apologies outside of maybe one word. And it didn't bother me. I'm not saying nothing in this is personal or anything, but it just, you watch other teams bow out of the playoffs and they, the coach doesn't have to come out and tell and rip the team, because you listen to the players after, and it's accountability. And I didn't see enough accountability from the players. And it wasn't necessarily shocking from some of them, but there's a few that I was like, I thought Adam Lowry probably could have maybe handled that better. Josh Morrissey was a Norris candidate because of Rick Bowness, because of the belief that Rick Bowness had in Josh, and the situations and the way that they featured him on the power play and all that stuff. I was just waiting for somebody to take accountability, and I thought, and I wrote this over the weekend or on Monday. The only person that really actually said something that was I don't want to say truthful, but of substance, was Connor Hellebuyck, who essentially said, maybe we just don't have the right group here or the right mix of players or whatever, right? And to me, that's the truth in all of this, right? Connor Hellebuyck could almost see the forest through the trees here, and it wasn't. And he still, I don't think he was too happy with the comments, but at the end of the day, I mean, you have to sit there and you have to take it on the chin there. I didn't like the idea, and I know people kind of balk about whether Bowness got dragged or whatever, or thrown under the bus or anything like that. I mean, to me, it was the players were there. I think the truth for me was there was more pushback on that podium on Saturday than there was on Thursday night when it mattered the most. And I think, at the end of the day, that's that's the problem, right? I mean, I think if the words are the problem more than the performance is the problem, then that's the actual problem, right? So
well, and you know what is funny, and we had Dave Poulin on Tuesday. And that's posted on the YouTube channel if you missed it. A really interesting conversation about the Jets in the offseason, everything that happened on the weekend from a guy that has been a player, has been an executive, has been in the media. And if anything, he said, this accelerates some of the changes that need to be made, whether we heard it from the general manager or not. But just on a couple things that you said there. Listen, I think Rick had to say something, and we were both in the room when all of a sudden the plans changed from Rick not speaking to him coming in. And if only we could have had that NHL.com feed, because Ken Weave did a live reenactment of the infamous WST GIF, if you recall. And, oh, what? It was just an amazing Weave moment. But listen, he came out there, and I guess as you mentioned, you said, oh, maybe that was a bad choice of words. But, I mean, I didn't take any of that as walking it back. I mean, the thing that stood out for me is I will never accept an effort like that in a game like that. And I thought that absolutely needed to be said. And I think Rick Bowness was brought in to try to reinstill or, establish more accountability that I think we'd all agree was certainly missing before. And I think there's still a process to get to that point. Yeah. And, part of that will probably mean, some personnel changes, but I think there's a lot of more development on some of these players. Lowry and Morrissey are interesting because, as we've talked about with Dave, I mean, those are probably the last guys that Rick Bowness was talking about when he was discussing, their best players being it. And, the more, because I was there and I sort of was a little surprised as well at the tone from those guys, especially Lowry. I mean, Josh is in a tough position because he wasn't even playing in the game, and he's got all the disappointment of not being there. Could I have made a difference? Would things have been different? But I think because of how fresh that was, and obviously how hot a number of the other players were, I think in some ways that was them kind of sticking up for their teammates, which, 100%. Which I mean, is admirable in some ways, but listen, it did create a very difficult situation for many of those guys. But to be honest, when you play the way they did in Game 5 and you go out the way they did, that's going to happen. And I guess going forward, I mean, the big question that I have, that I think a lot of people do, is what is the aftermath of this? I mean, listen, these guys are professionals, and I think that they're going to want to make sure that they're keeping guys with the level of maturity to maybe, and it'll be interesting. I mean, a couple of weeks later, when they look back at that, I wouldn't be surprised if some guys had said, listen, we didn't appreciate the tone or anything like that. But, when you look back at the game and the way the season ended, we probably, there was some merit to what Rick was saying. But, and I'm not sure if it's all about mending fences or anything like that, but just getting back to the bottom line, which is, you need to put forth that effort. And it was incredibly concerning because this has happened before against St. Louis. It happened against Montreal. And and that's a terrible thing to have hanging over a team that the minute you get pushed to the brink, you just fold. And I hate to say it, but that sort of happened in Game 5, and we'd seen it before.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this team needs to figure out the players that are, and I think it's fairly obvious, perhaps who needs to go here, who they need to start building this team around, what kind of identity, because I think at the end of the day, you're looking at this team and you're like, okay, you want them, like, where was the hard work in Game 5, right? Like, where was that? Like, where was the pushback? Like, you need a team that's driven by, pride, and Rick Bowness said it, right? Pride was a word that he used post game. And that's a theme, because we heard that at the end of last season with Paul Stastny's comments and I believe even Kyle Connors, along those lines. And so you need to get in some players here that take pride in what they're, and like, it's, you're not saying that all these guys aren't taking pride in what they're doing, but it was such a problem this season at times that, this core couldn't dig itself out of a hole for 2 months, and you see teams go through bad stretches in the season and all that, but like the arguably the toughest stretch that the Jets went through in the season was their best part of this season, right? Like they're dealing with injuries and they brought in all these kind of hardworking guys, the Mikey Esamonts and stuff like that. And then you just wonder, like, where was Mikey? Like, isn't Mikey Esamont the type of player you would have wanted in the playoffs? There was a skill there to go along with like the tenacity and the work ethic. And it just seems like this team has built itself into, I don't want to, it's sort of soft skill, right? Like it's the identity of this team is, they have a lot of the same players. They do a lot of the same things. We were talking earlier in the season that you couldn't put Nikolai Ehlers and Mark Scheifele on the same power play because both guys wanted to play the same position, right? On the power play. Like, I mean, you look back at the season and you see all these different kind of, I don't know, you want to call them red flags or whatever, but it's just like this team needs to be, one of the pillars of their creed was be like water. And Nate Schmidt mentioned this at the end of the year, like, adapting to different roles and all that kind of stuff. And there was just times this season where it seemed like guys refused or didn't want to play a certain role that they needed to play on that team. And I think at the end of the day, that's what you have to do. I mean, you need to get in players into this team that are willing to do what it takes to win hockey games. And I just think at the end of this season, I think, and at the end of this kind of era of this core, it just, as Hellebuck said, it just hasn't been the right mix of players that are willing to do what it takes all at the same time to pull in the right direction and kind of win hockey games and kind of battle through adversity at times. And that's the biggest thing for, Kevin Shoveldayoff this summer is, because we know he's going to be back. So you have to suss out on this team who is going to fit whatever identity that they want this team to be. Because that's the other thing. Like, I just don't see this team that's really had an identity since 2017-18, really. Like, I mean, you look at that team and maybe the first half of the 2018-19 season, but it was they had a big defense, right? They were a hard team to play against. You look at Ivan Barbashov's comment. I don't know if you guys talked about this earlier on the show, but he said yesterday, he's like, well, this series against Edmonton is, it's way more physical than the one against Winnipeg. And like that's sort of the thing to me, right? Is like this Jets team didn't really have an identity. Which is a bizarre
statement because that was a physical series and there was a ton of hitting. And I mean, they've had one game. Right? So I mean, like Edmonton wasn't running them out of the building or anything like that last night. I mean, at all. And Edmonton lost.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah, I just think that the Jets didn't show. They just didn't show a side of themselves in that series that was consistent enough. And we look at
unfortunately,
this, like,
Scott, what's been consistent is we've seen that for a number of years. So
right,
here
exactly.
we are. So here we are. And again, we've had these conversations before about it all. Moving forward, I really do believe, especially when we talk about some of those things you mentioned, Scheifele not wanting to move off that position in the power play and some of those things. Like, I really do think that some of these changes that we're talking about, there will be some benefits from addition by subtraction to the culture of the club. And whether that's allowing guys that, I personally believe in more as leaders to step up and really be the leaders going forward. And this is what gets to Blake's situation. I mean, I got a lot of time for what Blake did this year on the ice. I mean, at his age, and I know people are bent that this is the last couple of years of what was referred to as a legacy contract. You can debate that all you want. He's had an incredible run here. But it's very clear from what we heard with him starting the kind of, and maybe the most emphatic shot at Bones, and then some other guys following the way, he still is in a lot of ways the alpha in the room. And I got no issue with what he did on the ice. But if you are looking to change over your leadership group, your culture, unfortunately, he's probably a guy that, you're looking to move out. Scheifele as well. Yeah. I mean, and this goes back to 2019. I mean, that was the time where those guys were given the keys to the room. and then Buff leaves, and then Patrick Laine's gone, and we can relitigate all of that. But
yeah.
I think there is the potential, regardless of what comes back, on what assets come back, that there could be some addition to by subtraction when it comes to what Rick Bowness is trying to do, establishing the accountability within the group. And then the other thing, and this is what it comes to Shovel Day Off, and this is why I understand, not that you really told us anything, there's so many things up in the air when you're thinking about some of these key players that could be traded. And what they are looking for, both in talent, in skill, in age, at point in contract, but also in character. And some of those things that it's very hard to get an analytic number on. And Mikey Esamont's a perfect example.
Yeah.
The energy and will that sometimes had been lacking on some points before. And you put that all together. And it's a big, long list, but I really do believe that despite the fact that on paper, when these deals are made, whatever ones are, you're probably looking at getting back multiple pieces for one player, and on paper, it's not as good. But I'll tell you what, I think Rick Bowness is going to be in a better position next year if those deals are made to continue to create that level of accountability that I think can be a rising tide for the entire team.
Yeah, I don't think this team needs to be an all-star team at all times, right? To be competitive, and I think you see that around the NHL. I mean, you're watching it right now with teams like Seattle in the playoffs, and teams like that are, Florida even. And I get that Florida's got some really good players. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, the Jets have a lot of really good, talented players, right? And I still go back to Hellebuyck because that's what he said. I mean, that he's not. There's a lot of real talent on this league that I think if you send anywhere else in the NHL, they're going to be premier players for the teams that they're playing on. But at the same time, you need, it's not the right group here. And so you're going to have to, you have to find players that are willing to play the style of game that your head coach wants. Because if they're not, then you have the wrong head coach. And if the GM's not willing to do it, then why do you have the head coach behind the bench? Because now Kevin Cheveldayoff knows who Rick Bowness is. He knows exactly how he coaches. He knows the type of players that he likes to use. So there's an identity. If you want, you don't have to go in. We don't have to go into every season what's the identity of your team, right? They always said, I was too early, 30 games in to figure out what your identity is. Some of the best teams in the league already have established their identity before the season starts. Because that's the way the team is built. I always go back to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and a lot of people say, "Oh, that's not a good, fair assumption." Well, it is fair because that's the team that you want to be ultimately. You want to be a Stanley Cup winner, and so you don't have to build it the same way because you're going to have different parts and all that sort of thing. But you do want to create some sort of identity based on the players that you bring in. And that's how you want to make your team better. You want to mold your team around a certain style of play and a coaching philosophy and all that. And I think you have a number of those players here, right?
Yeah, but the bottom line is there's a number of guys on this team that as talented and skilled as they are, that don't seem to fit in to the identity that Rick Bowness is trying to establish. Yeah. And listen, Tampa at one point would have been a team that was trying to build that. The Jets, I think, like many teams in the National Hockey League, are a work in progress right now at getting to there. And I think having 1 year with Bones on the job, giving him the background of knowing what he got from some players, what he didn't from others, and frankly, what is missing, hopefully is going to be a driving factor in a number of these moves. Now, I mean, as we know, there's a lot of other factors and, when it comes to who you're able to get. But I do think that there's going to be, there'll be plenty of opportunity to bring in and to move players, and whether it's in the present, with a couple younger players that are on ELCs or their first contract coming in. I mean, I think those are the sort of players that are going to be targeted, that make sense for this club, that can then be part of the identity, to use your term, moving forward, and that's going to be on a number of levels of the organization to make happen.
Yeah, 100%, right? I mean, I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what it has to be. And it's going to be interesting to see, let's say they do trade Mark and they try and trade Blake and maybe even Hellebuck. What are you getting in return? Like for me, Blake Wheeler doesn't really bring a lot in return. You might actually have to pay somebody to get rid of his contract. I mean, at the end of the day, or they might buy him out. We'll see what happens. I think Mark gets you, a decent return, but you have to also understand, like, these guys are 1 year away. And so how much our team is really going to, be willing to pay if Mark Scheifele wants to test the free agent market too. It is delicate, it's really delicate.
To be honest, I think it's actually, it might help the Winnipeg Jets, at least in Scheifele's case. Well, because listen, Scheifele comes with incredible skill, incredible talent, but I think also a bit of a tarnished reputation. And I think he's going to go into a spot where they know what they're getting. They know that they're going to have a very motivated player to come in and do that. And the fact of the matter is that we see what teams pay at the trade deadline for guys for that final 6 weeks. It can be massive at times. So, that way you have to come in. You don't have to commit long-term right off the bat. If it works, you can go that way. And if not, listen, there's no doubt that with the contract that he was on, if they had decided to make this decision a couple years ago and a team knew that they were getting 3 years at 6.125, that value was more. But I think all we need to do is look at some of the moves around the league, especially at the deadline, and knowing what teams are getting for a player on that contract that just scored 42 goals. There'll be something for him. Listen, Billeck, we got to just quickly fill us in on what you guys have coming up over at the Sun. We got Brandon coming up, but I know the off season's just getting started. And of course the Bombers are back.
Yeah. Bombers, a little bit of Sea Bears, a little Ice, a little Gold Eyes. You were mentioning it earlier before I came on. Gold Eyes saw their spring training, sort of whatever you want to call that. Their training camp is getting underway here. So yeah, I mean, it's there'll be Jet stuff along the way, but I think a lot of people are just looking forward to getting outside and maybe watching some of our outdoor teams here in the city and that sort of thing getting going. So yeah, I'm off the rest of the week here, but I'm really looking forward to the Bombers this year. There's a lot. So I mean, it's football, and there's just so many storylines. And here's a team that's probably going to be out for revenge this year. Probably think, they should have won. They got a lot of that band still coming back from last year. And it's the Bombers. It's Mike O'Shea's team. It's going to be a juggernaut again. And it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, Unfinished Business Tour begins in a couple weeks. And we'll make arrangements for you to have a day off. And we'll meet you down at Craft Beer Corner at the ballpark as well. And enjoy summer right out of the gate with that home opener coming up later on this month. Scotty, thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Scott Billeck, Winnipeg Sun. Give him a follow on Twitter at Scott Billeck as well. All right, we're going to have Brandon Rewucki jump on in just a few minutes. But as we talk about summer and everything coming up, folks, make 2023 the year you take the plunge with Aquatech. Visit aqua-tech.ca to design your own custom pool. Their team can provide on-the-spot pricing from designers as well as financing options that suit you. And whole home renos start with Aquatech as well. With thousands of renos as their foundation, let Aquatech upgrade any space in your home. Aquatech is ready to make your reno dreams a reality. Learn more about design, pricing, and financing options at aqua-tech.ca. Barbecue season is here, folks, and our friends at Vita Health are ready for it. With the warm weather has arrived, you need to get down to Vita Health and stock up on delicious Vita Market grass-fed bison and beef steaks. And the perfect thing to help you digest that red meat is Health First Prime-Zyme digestive enzymes. Symptoms like heartburn, gas, bloating, and abdominal pain after meals may be signs that you're not digesting food well. Health First Prime-Zyme can help supplement enzyme levels to help break down proteins, carbohydrates, fats, lactose, and reduce digestive discomfort. That way you can enjoy that delicious food you're cooking. We may have to get some Health First Prime-Zyme for our next guest, the host of Skates and Plates, Brandon Rewucki. Vita Health Fresh Market, of course, you can't make it down to one of the 7 Vita Health stores. You can visit their website to buy online with local delivery options. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. As I mentioned yesterday, we gave out our final Unsung Hero Award with our friends at Wallace & Wallace. Can't thank them enough for the support of that program. And tomorrow, Josh Morrissey will join us to wrap it up. We'll talk to Josh about the season and the upcoming off season, as well as connect with the Dream Factory, who is, of course, the beneficiaries of the donations from Wallace & Wallace, which, of course, were matched by Josh and Margot Morrissey. So looking forward to that. Of course, Wallace & Wallace are Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialist. Visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Road on Kenaston for more on what they can do for you on a fencing or as the biggest and largest selection of overhead doors in the city. How's the closet looking, guys, as we get into spring and summer? If you need to up your menswear game, head on down and see the gang at F Apparel with custom suits beginning at $400, not to mention chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. Are you involved in a wedding party? Save some money and get a great suit that you can wear beyond the big day. 15% discount for wedding parties and a free custom shirt and tie valued at $150 for 2023 high school grads with the purchase of a new suit. F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown. Check them out online or make an appointment at that's EPHapparel.com. And hey, this weather's finally here. Golf courses are open. We're spending some time outside, and it is blizzard season. Pop down and see our friends at the Nick and Nicky DQ. 4 locations: DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, and DQ Niverville. And of course, if you do need a ice cream cake or potentially a blizzard cake for a little party or gathering, you can hit them up at DQ Manitoba, and they will get that ready for you for a quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. All right, let's get Rewucki on here. Brandon, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm just peachy. How's it going over there?
Now I'm trying to remember, did we talk last week on Thursday before Game 5, or did you come on Friday after Game 5?
I was thinking, so I came on after Game 5, but it feels like it was so long ago. I was like, have I not come on since the exit interviews?
Yeah.
And I haven't.
No, it feels like it's a month ago. That was Saturday and Sunday.
I might have to go to Vita Health for that stuff there, because I couldn't stomach the crap that came out of Canada Life Center on the weekend there. I don't know about everybody else, but my God.
It was something. I was down there for the entirety of it on Saturday and on Sunday, and it was. And again, we spent a lot of time talking about it. I'm kind of more interested in kind of moving forward as to where the team goes, but it was a spectacular end to the season on a number of ways. Everything outside of the performance by the team in game number 5, and unfortunately, that's something we've seen from the Winnipeg Jets in 2019 against the Blues, against the Montreal Canadiens, but. We've never heard anything quite like what Rick Bowness had after the game on Thursday, and I guess maybe we were naive to think that wouldn't really change the mood around everything that was going to happen at the rink on Garbage Bag Day.
Yeah, that was spectacular in the sense that the SpaceX rocket exploded into flames was also spectacular. Like, not the same reason that you would want to watch a spectacle, right? But that's the way it's been the past couple of years, man. Like, that's kind of been not the highlight of the year, right? But that's been the most newsworthy item about the Winnipeg Jets, is more so what's going on off the ice than what's going on the ice. And, you know, after a few days of reflection and things like that, and, you know, Murat brought up a really good point in one of his recent articles where, you know what, you could almost understand where the players were coming from in a sense. And that, like, yeah, they probably weren't happy about it. But it's in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's the biggest of deals. Like, they were pissed off. Bones was pissed off. Coaches, players generally butt heads. It's something that you kind of assume that for the majority of them, they're going to be able to get over with. And I think that's a fair point to make. But it was more so what we saw and what we heard on Sunday from the general manager, where it was this bizarre celebration of mediocrity. And again, over-reliance on what happened for one magical year in 2018. And that, to me, was way more so the newsworthy part than what we heard the players say out there on Saturday, because the players are kind of going to say what they generally do. They don't step out of line all that much. And again, what player wants to be a part of a rebuild? I imagine 99% of pro players don't. So there wasn't as much there, but it was more so there's a kind of this doom and gloom sense around the club here of, are they actually going to make the right steps, or is it just let's try to find a way to get 2 games worth of playoff revenue, and whatever happens that after that happens. Like, that is there legitimately going to be, a path that fans can get behind in terms of getting this team back to not just being competitive, but like, what's the whole point of having a hockey team? It's to win a Stanley Cup. And are they interested in making the hard decisions and having a clear direction towards maintaining and achieving that goal?
Yeah, I mean, listen, are they? Do they want to do that? I mean, I think you could argue that they would prefer it went a different way the last couple of years based on the decisions that they've made. But this is why I don't put too much into what Chevy said, or frankly didn't say on Sunday, is that. And I mean, hey, we live in a world where we want the information now, we want it fast. I mean, if anyone thought that he was going to roll out and say, this guy's gone, this guy's definitely gone, we're trading him, we're looking for this guy, I mean, that's just simply not going to happen. It doesn't happen anywhere, but especially with a group that's as maybe keeps things as close to the vest as the Winnipeg Jets do, which is maybe more than any team around. I do think, and I've said this a number of times this week, that it was a missed opportunity in the big picture with everything else that this organization is going to try to do away from the hockey operation, selling season tickets, kind of getting people back on board that maybe have been a little disillusioned, certainly with what happened in the second half of the season and the way the team ended, to not give a little bit of a bone on a hint or an inkling of change. But I don't think for a second that what we heard or didn't hear from Chevy on Sunday indicates, like, I did see a lot of people going, oh my God, they're running it back. They're just going to do this all over again. I mean, I think it's impossible to do that just based on the situation going on. I mean, these guys aren't dummies. I mean, they realize that, especially in Winnipeg with 1 year left on these contracts and the inability to get free agents and the difficulties of making trades with guys going on. I mean, this is in a lot of ways an absolutely crucial few months. And I have no doubt that everyone in that building knows. The bottom line is, though, Brandon, there's so much that is sort of coming to the forefront that's getting pressed to make happen. It's obvious. It would have been easy to say, listen, we understand this was a disappointing end of the season. We do think that we were capable of more, but we are happy with the gains that the team's made from where we were last year, not making the playoffs. And we'll be doing our best to make some changes that continue to make us competitive moving forward, and we'll see what those changes are. I mean, just something like that would have, which is the truth, and I don't think it would have cost them anything to do it. But that being said, I really do believe that is where this team is right now. Are you there as well?
Kind of. I mean, I agree with like 99% of that sentiment there. And I am 100% on board there. It wasn't like nobody, I think realistically at least, was saying like, hey, tell us who's getting moved. Who are you going after? Yeah. And like, it was more just like, let us know that you find this unacceptable, right? Like you're essentially the worst of 16 playoff teams, which puts you like 15th, 16th in the NHL. Like all it had to be was some kind of a platitude of, we're going to make changes, we're going to be better next year, and we're not just happy with getting into the dance. We want to be a team that goes deep year in and year out. So something along, I mean, that's what happened in Calgary. I mean,
even not promising that they're going to be better next year, because I'm not sure that they will be better next year. But the bottom line is, with whatever moves happen, I mean, if you're trading out players like a Scheifele or a Hellebuck or Dubois, I mean, it's not necessarily to make next year the year. It is to kind of reset the window and put the team on a positive track moving forward that people can buy in and be excited not only for next season, but for the future and the direction of the team.
Yeah, I just, I saw the Calgary Flames presser after they fired Sutter, and that was a team that finished 2 points behind the Jets, that won a single less playoff game than the Winnipeg Jets. And it was night and day, the two press, and that's a Calgary. Like they went to the second round last year. There was no talk of the second round. It was, look, this is unacceptable. There's going to be changes. We're going to get faster. We're going to get better, and we're going to try and make a run out of this. Like something like anything like that would have been completely acceptable. And then whatever happens, happens. And ultimately, talk is cheap. If the Jets, make some pretty groundbreaking moves and find a way to be competitive with a different mix of players next year, everyone's going to be fine, and we're going to forget this happened. But I'll tell you what, man, I thought after last year the player interviews and Paul Stastny's comments and what we heard out of everybody there, I thought there's no way they bring these guys back. There's just no way. You can't do that. And they did. So while I agree that like we're all kind of sitting here going, there's no way, like 1 year left. You can't. I cannot fully jump all on board with that. And I'll be in the let me see it before I fully commit to anything major happening change-wise here, because we've been sold this will be one of the most interesting / busy off seasons in Jets history for I think 2 to 3 years now. And we've seen the majority of this core, if not all of the core leadership group, stay here year after year after year, despite disappointing result after disappointing result.
If it's up to you, where do you start? What's the first thing that you're doing if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff? If you're talking about the changes, what's number one on the list?
Yeah, I think it's easy. I guess first things first, we talk to Connor Hellebuyck and get his sense of where things are at. I mean, I do everything in my power to keep Hellebuyck on board. And I kind of wonder, too, if that contract isn't maybe a shorter one than people might anticipate there. But I think first there needs to be a conversation had with Connor Hellebuyck. After that, though, in terms of like legitimate moves, I do the Billy Guerin. Blake Wheeler, either a trade or a buyout. Mark Scheifele, trade. We officially move on. I don't think this team can take any steps forward until those two, which have kind of formed what the Winnipeg Jets are right now, until those two are out of the picture. And then you start to build your team after that. Whether the return is picks or players ready to help now, I don't know, and kind of depends what the offers are out there. But to me, you have to rip the Band-Aid off at this point here. And we can't continue to have season-ending games where there's no shows up and down the ice, whether or not they're a part of it, right? But just we can't see these same things happen year after year after year and not look at who's driving the boat in terms of the players on this group and not make significant changes. And I think, again, when we talk about, or other people talk about this group of players maybe being entitled or arrogant to an extent, there needs to be a higher set of standards applied to that group in that locker room. And I think the only way you can go about changing that is by removing the big names here in Winnipeg and then finding out, okay, who are going to be the replacements for that and who's going to take this team to the next level. But I just don't think you can remake the Winnipeg Jets until those two big moves are made first and foremost, and then everything's decided after that. Yeah,
listen, I don't think you're going to have a lot of dispute around most circles of the Jets plan. And again, they're two very different situations. I mean, Wheeler, and the ironic thing about it all is that, we're talking about the team not showing up. Wheeler was the one guy, what do you have, 6 points in 5 games? I mean, he actually was pretty good, and he certainly exceeded my expectations of what he was going to be able to do this season on the ice. But it really came through loud and clear with the way he started off with the shots at Bones.
Yeah.
I mean, saying that he didn't like the way he conducted himself. I mean, listen, I mean, that I think was eminently clear that there was basically a lot of guys still looked to him and unfortunately sort of followed that mantra with what they said, but also where they went. But once you start there, and I guess maybe this gets back to, what was so disappointing about this season, regardless, or the playoff series, regardless of how you see things going in the future with Pierre-Luc Dubois, whether he's traded, if you maybe were still holding out hope that they could possibly sign him or something like that. I mean, to me, Dubois might have been at the top of the list for who Bones was talking about when he aired the team out afterwards, like our best players. Dubois, when you think about the way he looked in the first game of that series, and compare the way he looked in the game 5 of that series, like I have had this conversation with a number of friends over the last little bit, but like, what the hell happened? How do you go from there to there in 4 games in a playoff series? And I mean, whatever, I think his trade value will still be very high, but for a guy that finished off the way he did in Columbus, I don't think it helped the Winnipeg Jets when it comes to his value. But that's another. That is a guy that I think was right at the top of that list. And he's sort of. We're going to listen to some of his comments a little bit later on. We've kind of been holding off those because his situation's so interesting and unique in a way that he is an RFA, but they've got to maximize the value for it. But to me, the disappointment from Rick Bowness probably started with he and Kyle Connor in that final game. And we can talk about Blake Wheeler. We can talk about Mark Scheifele. Scheifele wasn't even playing in that game. But I think that's a big reason why he mentioned the 2 months in the second half of the season, because he did not want to make it all about just the guys that were in the lineup in Game 5.
You're 100% right. That's exactly what it is. Where the Scheifele Wheeler situation was maybe more of a January, February, March thing, whereas the Game 5 specifically was the Dubois Connor situation where they were non-existent, and the only time we noticed PLD from games 2 to 5 was when he took a back-breaking penalty and was sitting in the penalty box, and those are, of course, the ones that Vegas generally found a way to score on. So, I would agree too. Like, I don't think he's torpedoed his value, but you're not selling at an all-time high or anything like that.
What an opportunity it was for him, though. Talk about, you want to call your shots, you want to go, you want to have everyone in the league, wanting you, and you want to boost up your personal value when you sign that new contract. Show up for the playoffs.
Yeah.
It would be one thing if he was garbage through the entire series, but we were sitting here after Game 1 going, oh my God, this is the guy that they were hoping for when they traded Laine and Roslovic for. It was about the playoffs. It was about this moment, and that was him. And I still can't wrap my head around how different that player looked from the first game of the series until bowing out the way he did and they did as a team in game number 5.
He looked like that was the kind of guy Vegas was hoping they would get when they traded for Eichel. You know what I mean? And that's like a former number 2 pick in one of the best drafts in the last 30 years. But that was the level that he was playing at. And it wasn't one of those situations like the game, even just last night, like McDavid against the Knights. Like McDavid was pushing, but Vegas played him well. But you could see like he's trying things, he's getting involved. Still picks up 2 points because he's McDavid, right? But like you could see the effort being pushed out there. That wasn't the case in the final 4 games of that series against Vegas. It was just maybe I'll play this shift. Maybe I'll backcheck here. Maybe I'll go to the net now. When he should be a force every single shift that he's out there. And it's funny too. Like I might have said this on your show last week, but I mentioned it when me and Tyson did a podcast episode earlier this week. But like, how many Jets fans right now, if PLD's like 8x8, sign me up, I'm done. How many people are okay with that? I don't know, because I just don't know how you can reliably depend on him to show up over the course of a season and then over the course of the playoffs, because these dips and peaks are just, it's all over the place. And you kind of throw on top the fact that he seemingly doesn't want to be here long term. It kind of makes it an easy decision, doesn't it, for the Winnipeg Jets here that, look, you don't want to be here, that's fine. We're going to find somebody a la the Buffalo Sabres when they made a bunch of their most recent moves. We're going to find guys that want to be here. And that's going to be the part of our new group here. And I just said it's the writing on the wall that's been there forever. And I just think we see that take place sometime this summer.
I love that you mentioned the Sabres because, in a lot of ways, the Jets are sort of being forced into the position that Kevin Adams was with Jack Eichel, saying, and it was a lot more public at that point that, he wanted out. And again, this is a player that he did have some term left on his contract, but he's making $10 million. That's not an easy number to squeeze into, a top level team. But to me, and listen, the first round pick is big, and Peyton Krebs is a really talented young player that I think is going to have a great future there in Buffalo. But the most important guy in that trade was Alex Tuch. And because Buffalo needed to create a new culture in their club, and they're losing a guy that they had put so much into, what are you getting back? And this is a guy that was leaving Vegas where he had signed a long-term contract, but he's coming back to Buffalo, where he's from, where he grew up. And he absolutely embraced being a part of taking this Buffalo Sabres to a place that they need to be and knowing how much it would mean to the community. And that's really never happened with a local player. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a guy that's, from Winnipeg or from Manitoba, but you need to have that buy-in. And, I mean, listen, easier said than done. I couldn't have worked out much better for Buffalo, I think, in what they got both on the ice and from a culture change perspective, which they, I mean, of all teams in the league, probably needed the most. But I think there's some real similarities to that in the position that Cheveldayoff is in right now with some of those players, albeit not trading an Eichel with the $10 million deal and that sort of term, but that is sort of coming back. So let's get to this. I mean, we know that some of these players are most likely going to be gone. When you think about, and we have to acknowledge the challenges of Winnipeg, and I mean, a lot of guys, if they have a no move or a no trade clause, we're right at the top of that list here in the Peg. So given all of that, Brandon, when you're thinking about what could possibly be a return that helps the Jets, hopefully in the present, but definitely in the future, what are you targeting when you're potentially talking about moving a Scheifele, a Dubois, or potentially a Hellebuyck? Because those are the three players that could be on the move that I think still, based on their resumes, have significant value around the league.
Yeah, I mean, the Hellebuyck one is so fascinating because goalies surprisingly get traded for so little. And that's kind of why I mean, one, I'm a Flyers fan, so if I have a good goalie, like, you got to prime for my cold dead hands. So, like, there's that part of it for me. So I'm a little bit different than other people. But I just, like, I wonder if you're even going to get close in terms of trade value back as opposed to what Connor Hellebuyck brings right now. So I got Helly to me is a completely unique situation that I think we got to play wait and see on. But just Scheifele and Dubois specifically, I think, you know, there are a few intriguing possibilities, and I think even teams and players that you can mention that might be fits, and you can kind of go in different directions. I mean, the one team that I touched on earlier, but I do wonder about, even though that Daryl Sutter's gone now, is the Calgary Flames. And they have a centerman too out there in Calgary who's got a year left on his deal. And if you want to kind of do, let's stay competitive but change the complexion of our core, you know, maybe Scheifele for Lindholm might be something that makes both parties happy there. I don't know. Depends how unhappy Elias Lindholm is. But I mean, on top of that too, like, you would say Calgary's getting a more dynamic offensive guy, but Winnipeg's getting what they've been craving for forever, pretty much,
yeah,
right?
But
like,
for how long? I mean, can they afford to trade any of those players with the return not being something they at least have control on beyond next season?
Yeah, that's fair. It's a risky move, but you do have a year to convince him to stay at that point. Plus, if, you know, things go south before the trade deadline, you could still recoup a pretty big package for him in terms of he'd be the number one player, I would imagine, available at the deadline there. But that's like, if you were looking at, let's try to stay competitive this year, if Hellebuck's in the fold, Calgary might be an interesting team to target in a trade for either one of their guys up front or on the back end. Noah Hannafin too's kind of at the tail end. I can
tell you that
contract.
Trade was never happening if Daryl Sutter was involved, but he's
Correct.
not involved anymore.
Yeah, we don't got to worry about that problem anymore. But two teams that intrigue me, and it's the two teams that were, I think, most rumored to be involved before, are the New York Rangers and the LA Kings. Both teams come out in disappointing fashion in round one. You would imagine both teams are motivated to take their clubs to new levels. And they both have a mix of present and future picks, players, prospects that they can throw out there if they want to be aggressive and bring somebody in. I'd be shocked if you could get Byfield out of LA. That would be the dream scenario, but I would imagine the Kings are going to be a little more patient with that. But they've still got.
I was talking about Byfield yesterday, and the funny thing about Byfield is that, listen, he's got a ton of potential. He's a big center, but has not really done it yet at this level. And the Kings, especially with Kopitar and the ages of some of those players, I think they really feel that this is their time. To me, Byfield is the guy I think you're looking at as potentially being part of a Hellebuyck trade if he went there. Like, I'm not sure if that's the case and the weird thing is, you could end up getting your center back in a Hellebuyck deal, and potentially, Boston seems like a team, like, potentially with Bergeron and potentially with Krejci not around. They're going to have a huge, huge hole at center ice. And whether it's Mark Scheifele or Pierre-Luc Dubois, a package that potentially brings back like a Jeremy Swayman, for instance, and, a couple of other pieces, it'd be interesting. You're trading two things and getting the opposite back. But that's what's fascinating about Chevy's options right now, or what they are, is that you don't necessarily have to just be doing center for center, because as we expect, there's the potential of plenty of moves that could fill a couple things at the same time. And the Kings have said that they're looking for goaltending, and they know how important goaltending is. Jonathan Quick was a huge part of why they won those 2 Stanley Cups, and we saw the move that they made at the trade deadline.
That's totally fair. And I think too, even if the Jets traded a Scheifele and Dubois for like kind of your usual package, the whole picks and prospects sort of a thing, there's nothing stopping Chevy from that point turning around and saying, what can I get with these? Is there a center, wing, D, whatever? What can I get for this package? And go out and flip that for somebody that can be with the team for a couple of years, right? So, there's no shortage of avenues they can go down here. But whenever you're moving guys of that caliber, I always try to look at teams that were hoping to take the next step but took a step back, because they're usually the ones that want to be the most aggressive. And I think, maybe the Rangers even more than the Kings. I might be wrong. I think the Rangers might try to be a little more aggressive than LA is. But if you're talking about, speaking of Byfield, if you want to go after somebody with high-end potential and you're not interested in, quantity, you want quality. He hasn't had the best start to his career so far, but you do wonder if maybe a Lafreniere for either a Dubois or Scheifele is part of a package between those two teams, if New York wanted to try to take a big step forward this year. So I think LA, New York are the two clubs that I think make the most sense right now. But it is kind of tough to handicap, isn't it? Because there's so many balls up in the air right now. One thing I would mention, I don't know if anybody's brought this up on your show, any of the listeners, but if you wanted to get really juicy, if you were Chevy, Mark Scheifele at $6 million is pretty attractive to a lot of people. Right? How about Mark Scheifele at $3.2 million? It's pretty unprecedented to retain salary on a guy that, like, you're not giving, you know what I mean? Like, teams are going to be more than willing to take him on at full set. But like you mentioned, a Boston, or name your contender out there that's close.
Well, and Boston's going to have some. The way that things were set up with those cheap contracts and the bonuses, I think someone just mentioned in chat, they're looking at probably about $4.5 million in cap penalties next year. So that is going to be a real challenge. But the salary, that's a really interesting concept of that, and what that would bring back for a player at that number. It could potentially increase the value. And again, it's we've seen this before. What is the value of picks? What is the value of players? And what is the value of cap space? And that is one thing that, if these changes happen, the Winnipeg Jets may have a little bit of wiggle room to make their situation a bit better. I like that outside the box thinking.
Yeah, that's what we do over here.
Whether they'd be down for it or not is a whole other story, because it's not our money. But
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. But you also want to, as much as you can, maximize the value of your assets, right? And while right now there might be 5-6 teams that are both competitive and can fit $6 million under the cap, you'd be opening it up to damn well the entire league at whatever it is, 3.1 million there. So it's an interesting option that the club could go down, because I don't believe they've retained salary on anybody else at this point. So they've got their full 3 slots ready to go for that. They might end up using 2 of them this offseason. But I do like the fact that I think the Jets can be pretty flexible in terms of how they want to go about, banding these guys out in terms of what we're willing to help you out here, and then what we're able to take back at a potential package.
Dude, great stuff. This has been a lot of fun. I think our off-season conversations are going to be real interesting, as we can say. Probably won't be as many fireworks as last weekend, but we'll certainly have some time to do that coming up soon. Hey, listen, thanks again for jumping on with us, man. Always a pleasure to have you on. And maybe next week we'll hopefully be able to talk a little bit more Moose playoffs. Couple OT wins for the fellas last night. We got a special guest coming up right away, and see if Big Bad Brad and the Thunderbirds can make it through to the WHL final. Wouldn't that be cool to see him go up against the Ice, who made it through to the finals with their sweep yesterday?
Yeah, the boys are killing it right now. So Yeah, it's hey, it wasn't how I think everybody envisioned it, but there's some beauty playoff hockey going on right now in Winnipeg. So good times there at least.
Take it easy, folks. Subscribe to Skates and Plates wherever you get your favorite podcast. Brandon breaking it down, and I'm sure there'll be some good plates coming up in the summer as well. I'm available anytime if you want to go eat something, Brandon. All right, we do have a special guest coming up from the Manitoba Moose. Just before we do that, a big thanks to our friends at Princess Auto for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk, and of course, proudly supporting the Winnipeg Goldeyes, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and so many things here in our city. Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 local locations. You can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Lots of work to be done outside now that the snow's gone. It's getting nice out, folks. Consolidated Supply can help you in so many ways. They're the leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf, and of course, golf carts is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba, but also other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchen options, and also can help you with small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see Consolidated Supply. Their showrooms open to the public at 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. Royal Sports is Manitoba's #1 sports superstore. You know it well, folks. The biggest and best selection of licensed team gear featuring all your local teams, including the Jets and Bombers, teams around the National Hockey League, NFL. Those new draft hats are there, and tons of Jays and MLB gear just in time for the start of the season. And not just for fans, but for players as well. Spring stocks arriving daily. Soccer, baseball, softball, tennis equipment, and a huge selection of bikes. Get on down to Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and also follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And a couple more big games tonight in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. The Whiteout headquarters for the Jets, unfortunately, are over, but BP's the place to be if you want to watch playoff hockey with the gang. Get to your local BP and enjoy the new menu powered by Fanalytics, including the triple play combo with Thai chicken bites, Bandera bread, and cactus cuts. And if you are staying in, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right. Very special guest coming up. Now, a couple big things. A huge win last night for the Manitoba Moose, but also an incredible award. And this was just announced during the show. So this would categorize as WST breaking news. Jimmy Oligny, the Manitoba Moose American Specialty AHL Man of the Year for his contributions to the Winnipeg community during the 2022-2023 season. And Jimmy joins us now, coming off that big win last night. Jimmy, congratulations both to the squad and you, and thanks for being with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Thank you very much.
I want to get to the playoffs and the series in a minute, but just quickly your reaction to winning the Man of the Year award. I mean, it's we know how important the community involvement is to the Manitoba Moose. It has always been that way. And to get this award for everything that you've done in the community is really a tremendous honor.
Oh yeah, I'm very proud and honored. But it's not only my work. I feel like it's more of a team effort there, and the way that the staff is helping us get out there and the community, all that stuff. It's not just me winning this award. I feel it's more everybody that kind of contributed and getting us out there and helping us achieve all these programs and all that stuff.
Of course, as captain of the Moose, I mean, there's a lot that goes on along with that. But, I mean, I just want to run down a few of these things that, for folks that maybe aren't aware of what goes on. I mean, you opened the season at the Jets Fan Fest. You did St. Amant Autism Early Learning Classroom, served breakfast at Siloam Mission, read to elementary students at Balmoral Hall, helped raise money for Camp Quality, visited the Assiniboine Park Zoo along with teammates, meeting participants as well as individual programs involved with the Pride game. I guess in some ways it's part of being a captain, but it's also part of being a member of the Manitoba Moose, and that's something you guys have done so far. And I think that probably is a big reason why you've had the time and the great run you've had here and got the honor of being the captain.
Yeah, no, it's always fun. And what some of the people don't know, it's that like every time we go out somewhere, like let's say Saint Amand, or like just doing a bunch of visits like that, it's as much fun as for us that it is for the people that are welcoming us. So for me, like I really enjoy doing these things. So it just comes natural. But yeah, it's always fun to get out there and like learn some new stuff and work with some new people and doing all that. And it brings a lot of if you feel good about yourself when you do a bunch of stuff like that. So like I said, for me, it just comes natural, and I'm really happy and proud that as a team we won that award.
Well, and one other bit that I just before we get to the game and the playoffs, you helped create a new program in conjunction with the Kinship and Foster Family Network of Manitoba, which provides kinship and foster parents with training, guidance, and assistance to enhance their capacities, knowledge, and skills to provide quality care. You hosted many of those foster families at Moose games, met with them as well. Just tell us about that, and how rewarding that might have been for you personally as well.
Yeah, it's that project kind of came. I was talking with my girlfriend, and we were talking about like I wanted to get a little bit more involved, and we were thinking about stuff that not that it wasn't done before, but sometimes like kids that are kind of going under the radar and don't get as much attention and all that stuff. So we came up with this idea of foster kids and stuff like that, and I talked with Brad Andrews, and he was able to put that old program and getting it up and running, and I think it went really well, and the kids were, when you see a smile on a kid's face, there's nothing better, and we saw plenty of those through that program, so I was pretty happy with it.
Well, that is just some great stuff. Now, listen, in addition to, this great award, being Manitoba's Man of the Year, some other congratulations are in order. Another gutsy win for the boys last night in overtime. We'll talk about the series overall, but fill us in on last night, what it was like being on the ice there. Huge challenge, a massive game after the split at home, knowing you got 3 games on the road. To get that one and to do it again in extra time on Wyatt Bongiovanni's OT winner. What was it like back in the room afterwards? Because we certainly saw the celebration on the ice look pretty damn good.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was pretty stressful too. Like when it's a playoff game like that and it goes to OT, like it could go either way. But I want to say like I had a pretty good feeling this whole game. We were playing like. With our team, we're always playing hard, but I could see like we were winning battles and stuff. And like every win in the playoffs is so hard to get. So we were pretty pumped after the game, that's for sure.
I was at game 1 of the series, and that one did not go well for the club. And
no.
And what stood out to me was just how many of the guys on the Milwaukee squad I had just seen playing against the Jets for the Nashville Predators. I mean, that is a nature of the American Hockey League. When a team doesn't make the playoffs, you've got a lot of players that are eligible that'll come back down. You guys, I imagine, knew that you were in for a big-time challenge from the Milwaukee Admirals, a team that you're very familiar with through the year, but especially with the number of guys that had some time with Milwaukee, but ended the season playing in the NHL.
Yeah, no, it's like these guys are getting valuable experience when they get to play NHL games like that. But I feel like on our side, we didn't have too much change in our lineup throughout the year. So I feel like that's also an advantage when it comes to playing in the playoffs and wanting to play as a team. And when you get so many guys going up and down and stuff, like you kind of lose that. Not that team spirit or whatever, but you just lose that sense of, that's our team and that's the team we want to bring in the playoffs and all that stuff. So, we have a big command and all these guys that played in the NHL, but also I believe in our group and the way the way we've built throughout the year, what we want to do in the playoffs.
Well, you can't win without goaltending in the playoffs. And, I know it was a bit of a revolving door with the goalies coming back the game day of game number one. But what can you say about the bounce back from the netminders and the Finn Salmon and the performance he played last night against a Milwaukee team that has a lot of offensive firepower?
Yeah. Salmonen is a gamer. Like you can see it in between whistles and all that. When he comes to the bench, he fires the boys up and all that stuff. Outside of the rink is a pretty quiet guy, but you can see the fire in his eyes when we're on the ice and stuff. He's always like talking to the boys and always trying to fire us up. So big step up for him, and hopefully we can keep that going.
Well, and you know what? I mean, I want to ask you about a couple of other players. I mean, he's a captain, and one of the longest serving members of the club. You're the perfect guy to talk about. But I mean, when we talk about the blue line of the Moose, I mean, we're often talking about Ville, and we're talking about Declan Chisholm, and one of the guys that, and certainly Leon Gavanka, who had 20 goals. Tell us about the OT hero last night, Wyatt Bongiovanni, and what he's done for the club, and obviously the big one last night to give you guys the 2-1 series lead.
Yeah, he's got a good shot like we've seen last night, and that's one of the guys that came in this year and kind of got a few really important goals for us, even like throughout the seasons, and we take pride in telling ourselves like we're the type of team that plays four lines, and we saw it yesterday with Bunjo when he got that OT goal. Couldn't happen to a better guy. Just a great guy and does all the things right. So it's fun to see Bounce go in this direction.
In a lot of ways, it is somewhat appropriate that it was a defenseman getting the OT winner, because, I mean, when you look at the Moose, who are a really well-rounded team, it's not like you're top-heavy, relying all on one or two players. But, man, there's been a lot of offense coming from the blue line, really from the drop of the puck at the start of the season.
We've been known for that for sure. We've got some really skilled defensemen and that are not afraid to, go on the offense, and are also able to play in our own zone. So that's it's been the same group for a while now, and I think they matured pretty good into what they're trying to bring to the team and what their strengths are and all that. So yeah, it's fun to see, and I'm sure it's a pretty big threat for the opposing teams.
Well, and you know what? We were all pumped, to see our guy Jeff Malott score last night. I mean, he's been so kind to jump on with us a few times before, as well as Alex Limoges, who, has been on the show and had a great season so far this year, both getting big goals last night. But I did want to ask you about two players. And Jimmy, you've been around this league for a few years. You realize that when players who have had significant time in the National Hockey League get sent to the American Hockey League, it can go a couple of different ways. It's obviously, a bit of at times a disappointment. I mean, everybody wants to play in the best league in the world. And when you have that experience, some guys handle it differently. From all accounts, Dominic Toninato has been an amazing addition to this club and has really handled it well. And Jansen Harkins, I mean, I don't know what you can say about the performance. He, of course, had that OT winner in game number 2. I mean, if you could, from a captain's perspective, as a leader of the team, what have those guys brought to the Manitoba Moose, and how well have they handled, being sent to the American Hockey League, but also taking advantage of really helping this team get to where you are right now?
I mean, you couldn't have said better. These two guys are just, they're pillars in our team. They're guys that I don't think would be there if they weren't there this year with us. And exactly like you said, I've been in this league for a while now, and I've seen it go the wrong way. But these two guys are just like handling it with maturity, and they're there to get better like everybody else, and they're showing the way to the younger guys and all that stuff. And I think that's all to their credit. And the way they're playing too, like they might just go back to the NHL soon. So good on them for handling it with maturity, like I said, and like not seeing it like much of a disappointment or whatever, but trying to get better and helping the other guys along the way.
Moose captain and man of the year, Jimmy Oligny, with us after the big overtime win last night in game number 3. So fill us in. What was it like in the room afterwards? I mean, it must have been totally exciting to get that done, but you know that the job isn't finished. And fill us in on what the off day is like after the buzz of the big win, knowing how huge the opportunity you have is tomorrow.
Yeah, no, we take this day to rest a little bit. We got here and practiced the other day and then played right after. So that's just a rest day for us. And we know that the hardest win of the series is coming up. So I think everybody's aware of that. We'll make sure we mention it again. But yeah, after the win last night, we really wanted that game because it's kind of a pivotal game, if you want to say, like, especially away from home. So yeah, we're just resting today and preparing for a big game tomorrow.
Well, Jimmy, listen, thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations on the win last night to the team, and knowing what you and the team does in the community. And congratulations as well on the Man of the Year award. I mean, that is incredibly important. It's something that you should be really proud of. And hopefully we can talk more about it with some home games back in Winnipeg if you guys can get the job done. So get her done tomorrow. Good luck in Milwaukee, and we'll look forward to talking more about the Moose and hopefully seeing you guys back at Canada Life Center and keeping that ice in as long as possible through the playoffs.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Right on. There he is, the captain of the Moose, and just announced today as the Manitoba Moose AHL Man of the Year, Jimmy Oligny. What a great guy he is. And everyone around the team speaks so highly of Jimmy. And, he is more of a veteran player. And we talk a lot about the likes of the Chisholms and Hanolas and Gavankas. But he's been a big, big part of this organization for a number of years, and definitely a real deserving member, award winner of that. All right, we're going to get Remis back in here. Just before we do that, well, we'll raise a generic lager and a cheers to the Moose and to Jimmy for that award. Little Brown Jug has just launched generic lager, just a phenomenal beer. We had it at the sports trivia night when we were down at Little Brown Jug last month. And I actually had it on tap at the Osborne Tap House. So it's actually out in some of the bars as well. It's your basic lager, just better. Impressively standard in the best way. Light and clean to taste with a mellow flavor and a crisp finish. You can try it or pick it up down at the Tap Room on William Avenue. It's available in singles or in 8-packs. And as I said, keep your eyes open for it and Little Brown Jug around town when you're enjoying a few cold ones in this spring and this summer. We got the Wells Fargo Championship going on right now on the PGA Tour. And, of course, Breezy Bend is now open and ready to go for the season. Had a bunch of the fellas let me know that they had a heck of a great time at their first men's night on Tuesday. Cannot wait to get out there. Can tell you, though, right now, Kevin Streelman, K.H. Lee, and Taylor Moore, Xander Schauffele right now in the lead. I see Rory McIlroy at 3 under right now. Top Canadians, Adam Svensson at 3 under. Quail Hollow, an amazing, amazing course. Elevated event. If you're a golf fan, kind of back to a big tournament feel after a lighter field last week in Mexico. Of course, our golf reports all season long are brought to you by Breezy, one of Manitoba's top private clubs with a championship course, top-notch practice facility, and the best 19th hole around on their beautiful course-side patio. Great programs for men, ladies, and juniors. Make it your long-term golfing home for you and your family. Find out more at breezybend.ca or give our pal Corey Johnson a call for more information. And hey, just before I get Remo back in here, cannot wait to get back out to Aikens Lake at some point this summer. But they're filling up fast. If you're thinking about or want to inquire on a trip to Aikens for a world-class fishing experience and even more world-class hospitality from the Terrens and the great people that run Aikens, get on it now. Find out more at aikenslake.ca or give our friend Pitt Terren, Pitt at Aikens Lake, an email. They'll fill you in on everything available, whether you're doing a corporate outing or event or just a great friends and family trip. And by the way, they're looking for one more server or housekeeping staff. So if you do want to spend the summer in paradise, or you've got someone in the family that might fit in well there, send a resume to pitt@aikenslake.com. All right, let's get Remis back in here. And Remo, what a great interview with Jimmy, man. He is, as I said before, I mean, talking with Dan Fink and people around the organization, what he's meant to the club for a number of years, and obviously been named captain. A great honor for him today, and obviously big smiles around everyone with the Manitoba Moose after that big win yesterday in Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah. How do you not get fired up, Huss, about back-to-back overtime wins? So great having Jimmy on. Nice that he came on an off day, and you congratulate him for winning Man of the Year. But he said, "Hey, it's actually a team award, and credit him for giving credit to the organization who's making that community stuff a priority, which we've seen throughout the year." So we are looking forward to following the Moose in Milwaukee and trying to advance to the next round. 2 playoff series, and actually during that interview, as I should mention, Brian Munn sent out an email. The Ice playoff, they announced the dates for the WHL Championship. Game 1, May 12th. That's a Friday at 7 p.m. And Game 2 is the Saturday, the May 13th at 6 p.m. And tickets, Winnipeg.
Nice.
Yeah, WinnipegIce.ca start at $25, and they'll announce the rest of the schedule later. So that's our Ice schedule announcement.
Friday and Saturday, the 12th and 13th. So the Ice are going to have more than a week off to get ready for either Kamloops or Seattle. And I saw Isha Boy Bruce in chat saying he'd already copped his tickets. So if you're with us live on YouTube or you're listening to the podcast today, listen, that building is tiny. I mean, it's not big enough for WHL team or WHL playoffs, but that's where they're playing right now. So if you want to get there, what very well could be the Ice going up against Seattle with Brad Lambert, it's been a collision course all playoffs long. Get on those right now, and we'll definitely have some Ice content heading into the upcoming WHL Championship Series, and fingers crossed if they can get it done, the Memorial Cup as well. But back to the Moose for a minute. With that big win last night, Remo, maybe get the call ready. I'm never not impressed, with the amount that the Moose in particular do in the community. Often the schedule, maybe with a few more weekend games and less during the week and more time at home, allows them to get out more. But I mean, really back in my day when we started off, there was a ton of that, and it's just grown and grown. Jeff Major does a great job getting the team out there, and obviously Dan Fink, a huge part of it. And when Fink's not on with us and not calling the games, he and the great community relations team with the Moose are always working hard right now. So a hat tip to all of them as well, involved in the award for Jimmy today. But let's hear what Fink does best. I'm here every day to play a Fink goal call, especially an OT winner. And Fink was pretty fired up again last night when the Moose got it done in overtime off the stick of Wyatt Bongiovanni. This is how it sounded last night at moosehockey.com and on CJOB as well.
As Morales races in on the right side, he'll turn back to the wall after breaking an ankle's in front of him. Here's Bongiovanni, leads into one, and he scores! Wyatt Bongiovanni, overtime winner, and the Moose take this one 3-2-2.
Let her rip, Fink.
Their first power play goal of the series, with 23 seconds left in the man advantage, sends the Moose to a 2-1 series lead.
Oh, what a call from Dan. And hey, we all know there's not much more exciting things than OT winners in the playoffs. And Dan with another killer call last night for another huge win for the club.
I'm going to take a lozenge after that one. Really getting up there. And as you said, Huss, on Twitter, overtime winner. Just, you got to give her on those. No holding back for an overtime winner. So I don't know if they have... sometimes you see people have the camera on the play-by-play guy during those. I don't know if there was a camera on Dan, but that was awesome. So I love to see those OT winners.
Well, if they haven't had one yet, maybe don't start it right now. You don't want to change the juju, but I said this on the show. I wasn't sure this was going to be a long series after I saw what Milwaukee brought to Winnipeg, and the way they lit the Moose up in game number 1. And I mean, to win games against this Milwaukee team is impressive. They're not going to be running away with anything, but hanging in these games, getting them to OT, and finding a way to win. They've done it 2 games in a row. They got to do it one more time. Tomorrow night, Friday, will be game number 4, and I believe game 5 Sunday, if necessary. But best case scenario is we got another great Fink call to talk about the Moose moving on to the next round of the playoffs coming out of this weekend. All right, let's get over to the Coolbet lines and talk a little bit about these games tonight. National Hockey League playoffs continue, and the Dallas Stars and Toronto Maple Leafs, both at home, both down 1-0 in their series. And not surprisingly, both big favorites tonight. Leafs minus 195 at home. Florida Panthers plus 164. And the Dallas Stars minus 207. Kraken plus 174. And as far as the series prices, this is going to be interesting to check it out. Dallas is minus 110. Again, Dallas was minus 204 to begin. They were the biggest favorite of the second round. That one now is basically a pick-em. And the Toronto Maple Leafs, who were a pretty big favorite before the series started, are now the underdog at plus 104. So, Remo, as I was mentioning at the start, if you do still have faith in the teams that lost game 1, now's a great time to drop a little series bet on it. But what do you think about tonight's game? Will we be talking about 2 1-1 series tomorrow on WST?
Yeah, I think so. Dallas, they just about had it there. I've picked against Seattle in every game. Like when I was doing my my DraftKings, I just took Colorado's top guys. I don't know. I'm not a believer. I'm sorry. Obviously, I probably should be, considering they just won game 1 of the second round. However, I would still go with Dallas. I think Toronto evens it up. Those are the teams that I think are going to win the series. So, yeah, I'll take them to tie. There was I think it was a Ty Dellandrea who guaranteed a win for Dallas tonight. I don't know. If it was
I did not hear we had a guarantee. It is guarantee season when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Confirm.
Of all people.
Yeah, Rob Simpson, who we've had on the show, he covers the Kraken's Seattle Hockey Insider, says, Ty Dellandrea tells the media more than once that Dallas will win game 2 tonight. We'll take this one. Now, I don't know if it was like a guarantee, if that was like an official guarantee, or he's just showing that he's confident in his team. But he did say, we'll take this one.
Well, I kind of think they will too. I was stunned that they didn't win. But, as we said, I mean, the one thing they need to avoid, and all teams need to avoid, is any of their players scoring 4 goals in a game. Because it's quite clear that if you do that, it's impossible to win in the playoffs in 2023. Like, how bizarre is that? Back-to-back nights. 4-goal scorers on losing teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
And it's funny, the team that scored 4 goals, those were the only 4 goals. Like, you need more than one guy scoring goals if you want to win here, Dallas and Edmonton. So, Dallas got a lot of scorers. They're at home. Although, you know what? I think Seattle's got the advantage here with these 8:30 starts. Like this, if you're in the Central Time Zone, come playoffs, you're getting bent over. You're screwed. The fans are getting screwed. Teams are getting screwed. Like the games go to overtime, and it's midnight. People have to go home. They got stuff the next day. So I mean, if you want to do it in the first round, I get it. But like, what, Dallas just gonna play every single game at 8:30 local time? I don't like that.
Hilarious tweet from Jason Bruff last night. If you can score 4 goals in a game, then you can score 5. Draisaitl came up short, and we shouldn't let him off the hook.
Sure. I don't know what to say to that.
Tongue firmly planted in cheek, of course.
I guess. I mean, we'll have to see what happens there. We want to see Edmonton test Brossoit. I mean, they scored a lot of goals. We know the Jets was struggled to score goals in games 4 and 5, and there goes Edmonton scoring 4. However, they gave up. One of them was an empty net. They gave up 6, but if you're gonna score 4, you got to give up. If you want to win, you got to give up less than 4. It's just simple math.
Well, and listen, I mean, credit where credit is due. I mean, Vegas got the job done and scored those goals, but when Edmonton is going over the tape, that they'll see that it was a number of kind of bad giveaways, self-inflicted mistakes that Vegas does such a good job of taking advantage of, and they did it last night. Mark Stone, a big part of it. Jack Eichel, when he got the empty netter. The guy that's impressed me the most, Reem, though, Chandler Stevenson. I mean, he was a monster in that Jets series and continues to make an impact. Now, I believe 5 goals in 6 games in the playoffs so far this season.
The one thing about Vegas is they get it from everyone. Like Michael Amadio was getting in on it yesterday. One guy who Ken Weeb's his favorite player, who's actually a free agent after this playoffs, is Ivan Barbashev. Him too, getting on the board. So one thing about Vegas and Seattle are kind of similar. I know Vegas has Mark Stone and Jack Eichel, but they're not afraid to run 4 lines. Both teams, and they're all, anyone can do it. Yeah, it was Barbashev. He had 2 goals yesterday. Amadio with the 1 goal, as you said, Stevenson. So I mean, these are good teams, and credit to Vegas with their forecheck shutting down the Oilers, and we'll see how the Oilers respond in Game 2.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Couple things for tomorrow's show. Again, we're fired up to be working with the Assiniboia Downs again, and opening day is coming up on the 22nd of May at the track. But it is Derby weekend. The Kentucky Derby is live on Saturday, and as we do each and every year, we'll get a little bit of intel on that with our pal Kirk Contois from Assiniboia Downs, and we'll have Darren Dunn join us at some point heading into the first day of live racing on the 22nd of May. But if you do want, you can get an HPI bet account. That's what we were having fun betting online on the on the races from Assiniboia Downs all last year. Certainly, it'll all be up for the Oaks. And by the way, the guy that is the, I don't know what they call it, the master of ceremonies, kind of the guy that does gentlemen start your engines at NASCAR, the Kentucky Derby version of that, my guy, Patrick Mahomes. But going much better for Pat Mahomes right now than his idiot brother, I will tell you that much, who is...
I was gonna say that, but you took the words right out of my mouth there, Hustler.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, I'm a huge Mahomes guy, but his brother is an absolute moron. And you know what? He's actually got some pretty serious charges against him for a ridiculous, I'm not even sure if it was sexual assault, sexual battery of a woman. Anyways, let's just say that all the good genes went into the quarterback of the Chiefs, but the kid brother will be dealing with the law, and Mahomes will be out at the Kentucky Derby. So tomorrow, towards the end of the show, before marbles, we'll give you a bit of a primer for the Derby. But tomorrow's going to be awesome, Remo, because Ken Weeb is going to join us, and I'm quite looking forward to having Ken on, because if you recall, we had Ken on the day before Game 5. This will be the first time we've had Ken on since Rick Bowness' explosion, since everything on the weekend, and I think we can get into a real good conversation, not as much about what's happened, but where this team and organization goes from here. And, Ken will have takes, and one guy that I can guarantee that it's part of the future in Winnipeg is Josh Morrissey, who very well could be the next captain of the Winnipeg Jets, and Josh is going to join us tomorrow, very kindly giving us some time to talk about the season that has just passed, as well as his work with the Dream Factory and kind of putting a bow on our Unsung Hero program with our friends over at Wallace and Wallace. And shout out to the gang down at Corden Community Center. This is one of the things that was so great about this program, kind of honoring people that, are doing so much in the community without really any recognition. They were so excited. I know that video from our show yesterday when we announced that volunteer from Corden Community Center as the winner of the Unsung Hero was up on all their socials, and I think that's going to be a real focus for us next year when we fire up the Unsung Hero program again with Wallace and Wallace. We'll be on so many people that really are the lifeblood of minor sports here in Manitoba and everywhere, really, volunteers and the amount of hours that those people put in. So we'll talk about that and recap the season and look ahead to next year with Josh Morrissey on what should be a heck of a great way to get into Friday and into the weekend. And, of course, we will drop the marbles as well, Reem.
Oh, marbles. Yeah, we got the hoodies back too. Those are in. So this is exciting. And, yeah, looking forward to tomorrow's show. I really did enjoy Ken's column after the weekend. So I know he's soliciting questions for his latest mailbag as well. So that'll be a fun chat with Ken.
Well, Ken brought the heat. I mean, on a Ken Weeb heat-o-meter, that was max. That was maxed out. I mean, when talking about the Jets, so I'm looking forward to it. And by the way, speaking of mailbags being opened, you mentioned this to me off air, and I know our regulars in the chat will probably have a lot of fun with this. But when are we going to be doing our WST AMA episode, where we submit questions, sports questions, non-sports questions, and put them all together for what will be? I'm already laughing at just thinking about some of the stuff we're going to get from some of the people within the Discord and within our WST YouTube chat every day.
Yeah, I got to put out the question there. But yeah, for summer, we see what Murat's got a mailbag, Ken's got a mailbag too, soliciting questions. Why can't we do a mailbag? Like, why can't we solicit listener questions for topics? So if there's anything, I don't really care what it is. Jets, Bombers, sports, non-sports.
We talk about that for 2 hours every day. I'm kind of hoping it's more non-sports stuff, to be perfectly honest.
Food, Winnipeg topics, something you want, anything what it is. You can DM it to us. Go to our website. There's a contact form. I'm going to put out a post on our YouTube. You can comment under. But yeah, winnipegsportstalk.com, the contact. You can fill it out there. And we'll do an AMA segment. Answer anything. Doesn't even have to be sports related. You want advice on something. You want a hot take on anything. We will get to it.
And you know what? I think, from the success of the poutine hot dog review when I was in Toronto, one of the other things we'll get to more as we have time is some more video, some reviews on some other items. I was thinking about this last night because, Remo, I may have mentioned this, but have you seen the Mars cookie dough bar? It's like a Mars bar, but cookie dough flavor.
I'm only familiar with Kit Kat Pops. That's the ad that's repeatedly being shown on the Stanley Cup Playoffs. That was a callback there.
Well, I had that new Mars bar a couple days ago, and for whatever reason, the Reese's Big Cups. They now have my personal favorite one has always been the one with the little mini Reese's Pieces in it. There's also one with potato chips in it, and they're always in 2-packs. But last night I was at Sev, and I wasn't feeling like, a couple, but they had single big cups of Reese's peanut butter cups with Cocoa Puffs in them. Now, I had one. I regretted not doing a video for that, so we'll do a little bit of a run. And maybe a little bit of a gas station gourmet segment coming up on WST as well, with some fun reviews that we can throw on some of our social medias as well. So, yeah, exactly, Cabillas. Mars bar cookie dough version right now. It's in. I don't think it's in the small version. It's just the king size version with the 2. Pick it up at Sev right now. I think it's new. I liked it. I will say I liked it. And it definitely had the cookie dough flavor, but it's still very similar to the Mars bar that you've come to know and love. All right, we could talk about junk food for a long time, but we'll wait for the AMAs and some fun stuff we're going to be doing into the summer. That is going to do it for us. By the way, NBA playoffs as well. We were just finishing up the Coolbet lines. Series prices up for the NHL. If you want to get on it, get to coolbet.com. Check out the exclusives as well. We've had a great run of Lock Shop exclusives lately. We don't have one today, but we're going to have quite a bit of fun with that as well. I don't know where I'm going to go tonight. Maybe a goal scorer bet or something like that. Underdogs, especially in these games, have killed us. Although I did have Florida. Could Florida win tonight, Remo, at plus 164? Or the Leafs coming back?
They won game 1. They have Sergei Bobrovsky, who's back to being a Vezina goalie. Matthew Tkachuk trying to figure out how they're going to stop this guy from terrorizing everyone. Man, someone wrote in our comment section yesterday, I'm just picturing Paul Maurice. I want Florida to win for Paul Maurice. I want to see him lift the cup. And I started picturing Paul Maurice a year after resigning from the Jets, lifting the Stanley Cup. I think it's very possible, way more possible than I thought it was before the playoffs. I think the East is actually very wide open. It's coming in, you're like, oh, it's Boston's. They're winning 100%. Well, now they're done. I think just about anyone could win either one. And what's so great, is The most recent Cup champion of all the remaining teams is Carolina in 2006.
Yeah. Oh, there'll be a long-suffering fan base that's getting their hands on the Cup, whether it'll be really long like Toronto or whether it be a little more recent. Man, Carolina looked good last night. I, like many people, thought that they were in tough just because of the injuries that they've had, but they're ready to go, and Rod the Bod always gets his team ready to play. So 2 games tonight. Enjoy those games. We'll break them down tomorrow. We'll talk more about the Ice in the next week, getting ready for either Seattle or Kamloops. And fingers crossed, we'll have a Moose series to both attend and watch next week. They've got game 4 tomorrow against the Milwaukee Admirals. Big thanks to everyone that joined us today. Make sure to be here tomorrow. Josh Morrissey, Ken Wiebe, should be a great one. We'll also get ready for and we'll actually maybe check in with the Fish as well. As training camp's officially open, the team's about to get going, and we will have Kirk Contois jump on as well to let us know who we should be sprinkling on in the Kentucky Derby. So enjoy the games tonight. Make sure to join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. And whatever you do, make sure you're there in the last 15 or 20 minutes of the show around 2:45 for the marble race. Shout out to Shipham and Associates for the hoodies, which are in. If I owe you one, send me an email. If you haven't heard from me already, I think I got to everyone, but I might have missed a couple people. And otherwise, folks, shout out to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Enjoy the weather. Get outside. Maybe fire up the barbecue. Get a blizzard from Nick and Nikki DQ. And join us tomorrow to get ready for a big weekend right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks to Jimmy Oligny, and congratulations again on the Man of the Year award. And, of course, Billeck and Rewucki. Been a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.